Good morning, everybody. Is that better? All right. My name is Eric Lockwood. I'm one of the pastors at WoodBridge Church in Stephenville. I am so excited to be with you here this morning. I had a chance to come and speak at the WoodBridge Church over the summer several months ago. And so when Pastor Jared texted me to ask me to come back, it really showed just a lack of judgment on his part. I don't know how that happened. No, I'm so excited to be here. I love your church. I love your pastor and his family. The last time I was with Pastor Jared, we were at a conference in Philadelphia together. But the day before that conference, my church staff and I got a chance to go to New York City and do a little bit of sightseeing because we were so close. Philadelphia is only a short train ride from New York City, and so I got an opportunity to go and do a little sightseeing, and one of the pastors on our staff, she used to live in New York, and so she knows her way around everywhere. And so it was really neat to be able to go to New York City and have somebody who knew exactly how to get everywhere, what train to get on, what line to take, where to get off, where to change trains, which roads and streets and alleys and things to go down in order to get where you were going. The time before that I was in New York was about 12 or 13 years ago, and it did not work like that. I did not have somebody guiding me around the city who knew everything. My wife and I, we had been married for about 2 years at the time, and we were on vacation. We had gone up to New York, and we were both teachers, and we didn't have a whole lot of money. So we head up to New York, and we had kind of planned this trip, sleeping on couches and spare rooms, and the only place we had spent any real money was to go and visit New York City. We had tickets to a Broadway show. In order to save some money, we decided to stay on the Jersey side, which some of you who've been are like, that was your first mistake, and I would agree with you. But we decided to save some money, and we could stay at the Jersey side, and we could take the train into the city. The problem is, we knew where our tickets were. We knew that our show was going to be on 45th and Broadway. That was about all we knew. That was all we knew. And so we get to the train station, and we asked, what do we need to get in? We're trying to get into the city. We're trying to see a show. And they had an attendant there because they knew they got a lot of dumb tourists that come through and don't know anything. We were like, that's us. And he says, you need a ticket to New York Penn Station. I said, great. So we bought our tickets. We get on the train. We head into the city, and the train's got to make a couple stops on the way, and it makes it to the first stop, and the announcer gets on to let us know where we are, and the announcer says, from. And I was like, great, they got Charlie Brown's teacher to run the train station announcements. I have no idea what this person just said. I don't know where we're going or what we're doing, and now there's no real instruction. So we get to the next stop, it's the same thing, from. Okay. And we get to the next stop, and here's what we hear, from Newark Penn Station. I was like, all right, we're here. This is it. Let's get off. No one had even come to take our tickets yet. I was like, we could have gotten this train ride for free. And we get off the train, and all of a sudden we realize, something's not right. Something's not right, because we're supposed to be getting off in Midtown Manhattan, and we get off, and we're like, something's not right here. So we go to the information booth. On the same line that goes up to New York Penn Station, that train also makes a stop in Newark Penn Station. We are in Newark, New Jersey, instead of Manhattan. So we have to run across Newark Penn Station to get back on a train to take us to where we want to be. See, when the expectations are clear, it's easy to get where you're going. It's easy to follow. But when the expectations get muddied, when the expectations are unclear, it becomes much more difficult. That's true on a train, but that's true in every area of our lives, and it's especially true when it comes to following Jesus. Now, here in America, the expectations of what following Jesus looks like, they've become kind of muddied by our culture, by a lot of different kinds of churches and religious expectations. I would say pretty much everybody in this room grew up with a different set of religious ideas. Everybody comes from a different set of those things. Whether you grew up in church, maybe you were like me, you grew up in church, and you've been going to church since you were a fetus. And you've got all of these ideas about what it means to follow Jesus. Maybe for some of you, this is your very first time in church, or maybe your first time in a long time. For some of us, we grew up with some very different ideas of what it means to follow Jesus, because we looked at the people around us and we were like, if that's what it means to follow Jesus, I don't want anything to do with those people. And we get all these different voices and we hear all these different things. And maybe we have this idea that following Jesus means I've got to have this rock solid faith, and otherwise I'm not worthy to follow him. Maybe we think that it means I got to do all of these things. I got to be perfect in order to follow him. Maybe it means any number of different things to each one of us. See, the expectations have become kind of muddied. The expectations have become unclear, and as a result, it has become very difficult for a lot of people in our culture, in our day and age, to know, what does it really mean to follow Jesus? So for the rest of my time this morning, I want to take a look at the man himself, Jesus, and something that he said, an interaction that he had with his first set of followers, as he's kind of setting up what this church thing is going to look like, what following Jesus is going to look like in the future. He leaves them with some instructions, some imperatives that says, this is what it's going to look like. This is what I want you to do as you lead other people to a relationship with me and to following me. And so we're going to turn in our Bibles. If you brought a Bible with you, you can turn there. If not, don't worry. Everything's going to be up on the screen. We're going to be in Matthew 28 this morning. If you're new to church or you're new to the Bible is broken up into two parts: the Old Testament and then the New Testament. Right? The Old Testament is a history of the movement and the people of God, and it reveals to us our need for a Savior, and that's the story of the New Testament. It's the story of Jesus, of his birth, his life, his death on a cross, his resurrection, that means he came back to life, and the beginning of his early church. The passage we're going to look at this morning comes after that resurrection, just as Jesus is leaving and establishing that church with his followers. And so here's what happens. This is Matthew chapter 28, and we're going to start in verses 16 and 17. It says, the 11 disciples traveled to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Now, I've read this passage a couple times, but as I was preparing for this message today, something jumped out at me that I just hadn't noticed before. That these disciples that had been with him from the beginning, they're here now at the end. They've seen all of it in person, face to face. They've had conversations with Jesus. They've seen the miracles. They've seen him die on a cross and rise from the dead. And they're having this final conversation with Jesus. He pulls them aside to this mountaintop retreat, and they come and they worship him, but it says some of them still doubted. You see, conventional wisdom, for those of us that live 2,000 years later, says, man, if I had been there and I had seen everything, then I would know for sure, and I would have this rock-solid faith, and I would be able to follow Jesus. But I still have these doubts, and I still have these questions, and I still have these things that go unanswered, and as a result, I'm kind of putting off following Jesus. I'm not sure if that's really for me. That's what I want you to know. And I want you to know that this idea of having doubts and having questions, it's not new to us. It's not new to our generation. It's not new to the church. In fact, it started with the people who were there the whole time. The people that saw it all happen, and yet they still had doubts. And so the first thing I want you to know, the thing I put up on the screen that I want you to take home, if you're a note taker, I want you to write this down, is you don't have to have everything figured out to genuinely follow Jesus. A lot of us think we got to have it all answered first. A lot of us figured, I've got to know. I can't have any doubts if I'm going to start following Jesus. The truth is, I've got doubts too. I've got lots of questions that have gone unanswered. I don't know the answer to everything. I'm learning, and I'm growing, and I'm experiencing things in my walk with Jesus as I follow him that's helping me through those things. But if you think you're the only person in this room with doubts, you're wrong. We all do. And so do Jesus' first followers. It doesn't stop you from following Jesus. See, a lot of people think that this is a deal breaker. I've got to have it all figured out. I got to know for sure. And Jesus says, no, you don't, because you're never going to have it all figured out. And the thing about faith is you're never going to really know for sure. If that's what's stopping you from putting your trust in Jesus, I want you to know that shouldn't be. In our culture, in our churches, we've kind of made this a thing, and we've said you've had to have it all figured out. But you don't. Not to start the process. Not to take that step and say, Jesus, I trust you even though I don't understand. I trust you even though I don't know all the answers. I trust you even though I haven't got it all figured out. I still trust you, and I put my trust for my eternity in you, and I want to follow you. Jesus' first disciples were in that same boat. They were in that with us too. It was just like that for them. And so I want you to know, first of all, that following Jesus doesn't mean you have it all figured out. It just means that you're willing to trust him even though you don't know all the answers. And then Jesus moves forward in his conversation with his disciples. It says, Jesus came near and said to them, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this: I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Jesus says a couple things here. A couple things that I kind of want to look at one at a time. First, he says, I want you to go and make disciples of all nations. What that means is this following Jesus thing is not just for one kind of person, it's for every kind of person. It doesn't matter what your background is or where you're from. It doesn't matter what's in your past or what you've done. It doesn't matter the color of your skin or your political affiliation. It doesn't matter how much money is in your bank account. It doesn't matter all of the mistakes that you've made in your past. None of that matters. Because Jesus says, I want you to go to every single person from every single background and every single history and every single lifestyle and every single worldview, and I want you to connect with all of them because every single one is invited to follow me. Maybe some of us have been thinking, I can't follow Jesus because I got all this junk in my past. I can't follow Jesus because I've got all these issues I'm still struggling with. Jesus says, no, this is for everybody. This is an all skate. Everybody can play. Everyone is invited to the table. Because Jesus says, I want you to go and I want you to tell every single person that they are invited to come follow. But there's nothing in your past that precludes you from following. If you've been saying to yourself, I can't follow Jesus because I have all of this sin, I want you to know something really important, right? Sin is not a disqualification for following Jesus. Actually, it's a prerequisite. Because I don't know anybody that's ever followed Jesus that wasn't a sinner. It's a prerequisite. It's a requirement. It's the whole reason Jesus came in the first place, is because he saw people who were sinful and said, I still love them in the midst of their rebellion, in the midst of them walking away from me. I still love them so much that I'm willing to send my son to come and die in their place, in the middle of all of their sin, not waiting for them to clean their mess up, but because I know that they're not capable of cleaning their mess up, and so I'm going to clean it up for them. And Jesus says, I want you to come. I want everybody to come. I want everybody to know. Everybody is invited to following Jesus. And then he says to his disciples, as you start to build this church and as you start to help people understand what it really means to follow me, he says, I want you to baptize them. I want you to baptize them. Well, what's baptism? We saw an invitation to come and get baptized next month. But baptism, if you've seen a baptism before, is an opportunity for someone to give an outward show of an inside change, to let people on the outside know what's happened on the inside, that they have put their trust in Jesus. They don't have all the answers. They haven't all got it all figured out. But they're willing to take that first step to say, I want my church family, I want the people in my community to be able to experience an outward sign of an inward change. It's something inside has happened to me because I placed my trust in Jesus. He says, if you want to follow me, you got to put your trust in me. Trust in me for your salvation, for your eternity. And if you put your trust in me, then that trust needs to come out, and people need to see an outward sign of that inward change. If you want to follow me, you got to trust in me. You want to follow me, you got to trust in me. You have to accept the fact that I came for a sinful person named you because I loved you. I wanted you to have a relationship with me. You got to trust in me. Jesus says. You want to follow me? You got to trust me. And then he says, I want you to teach them to obey all the commands I have given you. And here's where things get interesting. See, because a lot of people have put off following Jesus because they go, well, I can't learn all that stuff, and I can't do all that stuff. I can't be good enough. And a lot of us view the commands of Jesus as a burden to shoulder. I gotta jump through all these hoops. I gotta do all the right things. I gotta say all the right things. And it becomes this burden that comes on us. I want you to know that when Jesus says, I've got commands I want you to follow you, he never intended for them to be a burden to place on his followers. Instead, he intended them to make our lives better and to make us better at life. Let me explain that. Because it doesn't make your life perfect, and it doesn't make your life easier, but it can make your life better if you learn to follow those things. Let me give you an example. One time my wife and I went camping. We went this was several years back. We went to Colorado. We didn't have any kids at the time. It was just the two of us. It was our first trip to, how many guys have been to Colorado before? It's beautiful country, beautiful, beautiful place. I love to be up there, and we like to be out. If we're going to be up in a beautiful place, we're going to be up in a beautiful place. So we were out camping, like in tents and stuff, right? Some of you are like, tents, that's a little intense. Thank you, I didn't deserve that. But we were out, we were camping, and we wanted the whole experience, man. It was our first time in Colorado. We wanted the real thing. And so we didn't just get a campsite where if you've ever been camping before, you got those campsites around a big circle, and you pull up in your car and you set up your tent and all the thing. No. We wanted to take it to the next level. We said, let's get what they call a walkout site. And a walkout site is where everybody kind of parks their car in a parking lot, and there's a trail through the woods. And you walk down that trail, and as you get into the trail, that's where your campsites start to pop up. Right? There's no electricity. There's no running water. There's just you and the bears. And that's it. And we were like, this is going to be great. This is going to be such a great experience to have all of this nature around us and see no technology and see no modern anything, just to be kind of out there. And it was a really neat experience. And so we were visiting Colorado. We had set up our tent. We had gone to do some sightseeing. We were in Colorado Springs, so we see the Garden of the Gods, and we go see Pikes Peak, and we'd gone to this big working dude ranch for dinner that night. It was great, and we get back late, and we pull into the parking lot, and I go to my wife Megan, and I go, okay, where's the flashlight? And she said, I thought you had the flashlight. And this was a long time ago. This was before we carried flashlights in our pockets, right? My little flip phone wasn't going to do nothing out here. We're in the wilderness, and I got to walk out to my tent to get the lantern to bring it back to get my wife with the bears. And all of a sudden, you get out of that car, she left the lights on so I could see for a little bit. But as you move further and further, it's just moonlight, and that's it. And every little twig that snaps, you're like, it's a bear! Right? Every little movement, every rustle of the wind is some kind of creature coming to eat your face. Because that's what it feels like when you're walking through the darkness in a bear-infested wilderness. And I just had to grope around and squint in order to get out to our tent, find the lantern, find the flashlight, bring it back, pick up my wife, who was waiting safely in our car. See, nobody complains about a flashlight in the darkness. Nobody complains about a flashlight to light the way when you're walking in the darkness. Yes, everybody complains about a backpack full of bricks. That's a burden that weighs you down. But nobody complains about a flashlight when you're walking through the darkness. See, Jesus, when he gave us commands, he didn't intend them to be a backpack full of bricks. That's a burden that weighs us down. He says, no, that's not what this is. This isn't a list of things to do in order to earn my love. It isn't a bunch of hoops to jump through in order to get my attention. No, this is supposed to be a flashlight to help you walk through the darkness, to give you an opportunity to make better choices. Because a backpack, a burden, it says, these are commands that God has placed on us so that we can have less fun. Yeah, if it's a backpack full of bricks, it sure is. But if it's a flashlight, he says, this is an opportunity so you can have less regret and less hurt and less loss and less pain so that you can hurt fewer people. It's a flashlight to guide you so that it can make your life better, so that it can make you better at life. Doesn't make your life perfect, doesn't make your life easy, but it makes it better because you got a flashlight that helps you walk through the darkness and you know what to do. You know how to interact with people in a way that only God could help you do. You know how to get through those difficult situations because God's giving you wisdom through following his commands. It's a flashlight in the darkness. And just like that, baptism was an outward expression of an inward decision. God says, so are when you follow my commands. It's the same thing, that people get to see how much better your life is because of me. And that's why I wrote this down. You may have to go back to get to it. But it says, followers of Jesus live their lives in a way that shows the world just how much better off they are because of Jesus. If you don't get anything else out of the day, this is what I want you to grab hold of. The followers of Jesus, if you want to follow Jesus, the instructions get real muddy if you listen to a lot of different voices. If you listen to our culture and all the different kinds of churches and all the different things. But if you go back to what Jesus said, as he's established, the last things he said to his followers to let them know what it looked like to follow him going forward. He said, I want you to live your lives in such a way that everybody can see how much better off you are because of me. So if you're not a follower of Jesus this morning, and maybe you've been hurt by churches in the past because people didn't live like this in those churches. Maybe you like the idea of Jesus, you've been checking out church, you've been coming here and listening and connecting, but you haven't got all the answers, and you're waiting to get all those doubts figured out before you take that step of faith. I want to encourage you this morning. Those things don't represent what it really looks like to follow Jesus. Those things don't represent what it really looks like to follow Jesus. Those things are just clutter, just noise that keep us from the truth of what Jesus asks us to do. Jesus is asking you to put your trust in him, to say, I trust you to save me from my sins. And I trust you to guide me through the darkness so that my eternity is better because of you and my life here on earth is better because of you. And I want to follow you and live in such a way that everybody can see how much better off I am. How much better off I am because I've trusted you with my eternity. For those of us in here that are followers of Jesus, does this describe you? Do the people in your communities know how much better off you are because of Jesus? If you are a follower of Jesus, do people in your classes or at your work know how much better off you are because of Jesus? If you're a follower of Jesus, do people know in your family how much better off you are because of Jesus? See, the truth is, in the American South Bible Belt, this isn't what Jesus followers are known for. It's not. If you turn on your Google and you use the predictive text, which as you start entering words, it starts to guess what you're going to ask for based on what other people have Googled before. If you go into Google with predictive text on and you type in, why are Christians so? Do you know what's going to fill in that gap with? Do you know what Google is going to predict based on what other people have searched for? It's not going to be loving or kind or charitable or generous or welcoming. No. Do you know what it says? If you Google why are Christians so and let it predict, why are Christians so mean, angry, judgmental, hypocritical, homophobic? That's what it's going to say. That's what it's going to ask. That's what it figures you're looking for. Why? Because that's what Jesus' followers are known for. And if you're not a follower of Jesus and it's because of those things, I want to apologize. I want to apologize on behalf of those of us that are really trying to follow Jesus. Because a lot of people say they follow Jesus, but they don't live in such a way that everyone can see how much better off they are. In fact, they live in such a way that they want everyone to feel worse. But imagine if the WoodBridge Church was known as the exception to that rule. Right? What would happen in your community? Because this is the same thing I pray for my church and my community. What would happen if in your community, the WoodBridge Church was known as the exception to that rule? That people in this community said, I don't know if I believe all that stuff about God, but man, those people at the WoodBridge Church, they just seem to be better at life. Well, I don't know if I believe all this stuff. I'm not sure I believe what they believe, but I sure want to hire them as my employees because they're some of the best workers, and they're so great for team morale. I don't know if I believe what they believe, but I sure want them in my classrooms. I sure want them in my classrooms because they're the best students and they act with integrity. Imagine what would happen in your community, in my community, if Christians started to be known for what they were for instead of what they were against. If Christians started to be known for how much they loved people and how much better off they were because of what Jesus had done in them instead of for all the negatives. And that's my prayer for you, for your church, for your community, for me, for my church, for my community in Stephenville. That people would be able to see us and say there's something different about that person. They seem so much better off. And I don't know if I believe what they believe, but I might be willing to listen now, whereas I wasn't before. Because they're not going to judge me and they're not going to be mean to me. They're going to care about me. So here's what I want to do. The bands come up. We're almost done. But I want to say a prayer of blessing over your church, over your community, over your homes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give those of us in this room an opportunity to respond to following Jesus. Maybe you've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Maybe because you felt like you didn't have all the answers. Maybe because you felt like you still had doubts and you couldn't follow Jesus. Maybe you felt like you had too much sin and you couldn't follow Jesus. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that this morning. Maybe because you've been coming to church your whole life and you realize this morning, I've been coming to church, but I haven't been following Jesus. I want to put my trust in him. And I want to live in a way that shows everybody how much better off I am because of what Jesus has done for me. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for sending Jesus for each and every one of us. Thank you so much that in the middle of our sin and our doubt and our loss, God, you loved us and you forgave us. Lord, I just pray over this church. I love this church. I love this church. And I want this church to be known for people who follow you, God. So that this community can see what it really looks like. So that this world can see what it really looks like. So that the students at the college can see what it really looks like. So that the people who've lived here all their lives can see what it really looks like to follow you. That this church could be a light for the community, a light in the darkness. God, not a burden, but a light to show the way. And God, I want to pray for those in this room that have been putting off following you, accepting you, trusting in you. And God, I'm going to give them an opportunity to pray with me right now, to repeat these words. God, there's nothing magical in these words, but if their heart, the attitude of their heart, the trust in their heart is genuine, you'll hear this prayer. You'll forgive them and you'll begin a relationship with them where they can begin to follow you. And it goes like this. Heavenly Father, I know that I'm a sinner, but I believe that you sent Jesus for me. I put my trust in you, and I will follow you. Thank you for new life. I give you mine. It's in your name I pray. Amen. If you prayed that prayer with me just now, I want you to do something for me, because I'm gonna be up here. I'm gonna have a chance to talk to you after the service is over, but then I'm gonna eat some lunch. I'm gonna get in a car and I'm gonna drive back home. But if you take that connection card that you received on your way in, or maybe if you didn't get one, you can pick one up on your way out, and you just fill that out for us with just some basic information. Again, I promise you, nobody's going to stalk you on Facebook. Nobody's going to show up at your Sunday dinner, but they would love to be able to connect with you and talk to you about what that means going forward. If you've got questions, you've got doubts, if you're not sure about following Jesus, or you want to know what it looks like to live that out, I heard an announcement this morning. Pastor Jared's got a discipleship class that starts next week. That's a great opportunity to say, you know what, I'm putting my trust in you now, but then I'm going to come back on Sunday and I'm going to get some of those questions answered. I'm going to deal with some of those doubts. I want to encourage you in those areas, because this is so important. I'm going to turn it over to Dusty. He's going to talk to you a little bit about the offering.
So the baskets are going to come by. We got one more song. Some of us, the way that we worship is by giving, and that would be the right time to do that. And also just rip off your connection cards and throw them in there.